Some of these voices recorded the song the same week the label told them they were being dropped. Some wrote the melody from a jail cell and watched a man file the copyright. Some sang every single word of a #1 record and were never once allowed to stand in front of the microphone at the press event. These are the 12 most erased female voices in R&B and soul history 1963 to 1976, and the real stories behind them, the stolen sessions, the forged credits, the publishing rights signed away for $40, the #1s that made other people millionaires, will change the way you hear every single one of these songs forever. Subscribe right now, because #1 is a woman who sang at your grandmother's house, your parents' wedding, your first heartbreak, and whose name has been buried so completely, so deliberately for so long, that the industry built an entire mythology around erasing it. The countdown begins now. Number 12, Piece of My Heart, Erma Franklin, 1967. Picture Atlantic Records, New York City, 1967. Erma Franklin, older sister of Aretha, a vocalist with a voice that her own family described as the most naturally powerful of any of the Franklin children, walks into a session and cuts a record that should, by any reasonable commercial measure, have made her a superstar. The song is Piece of My Heart. She sings it with a ferocity that is almost frightening, raw, full-throated, completely unguarded, the kind of performance that happens when a singer stops performing and starts testifying. Atlantic releases it as a single. It does not chart the way it should. The label does not push it. The promotional resources that a record of that quality deserved simply do not materialize, and the song fades. 1 year later, Big Brother and the holding company, Janis Joplin out front, record a cover version. The label puts everything behind it, radio plays it constantly. It becomes one of the defining songs of 1968. Joplin's version becomes the version. The original, Erma Franklin's version, the one recorded first, the one that was in every meaningful sense the superior vocal performance, becomes a footnote that music historians occasionally mention in the small print. This is not a story about Janis Joplin being wrong to record the song. She sang it brilliantly, and she credited Erma Franklin publicly and generously. This is a story about two women recording the same song, and one of them having the full weight of the music industry's promotional machinery behind her, and the other one not. The variable was not talent. The variable was access, and access in 1967 was distributed along lines that had nothing to do with what you could do with your voice. Erma Franklin spent the rest of her career working locally in Detroit, performing at community events, eventually becoming a pastor. She was a woman with one of the greatest voices in American music, and the industry gave her one shot and then looked away. The song that should have been her breakthrough became, instead, the centerpiece of someone else's legacy. That is not a music story. That is an economic story. Number 11, Nowhere to Run, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, 1965, January 1965. Martha Reeves is in Studio A at Hitsville, USA. The converted house on West Grand Boulevard in Detroit, where Motown has been building its empire track by track since 1959. She has been at this building longer than almost anyone. She came in as a secretary. She became a singer because the label needed a lead vocalist in an emergency one afternoon, and she was the person standing in the hallway. That is the Motown story that everyone tells because it sounds like a fairy tale. Here is the part that comes after the fairy tale. Martha Reeves is one of the most gifted interpreters of popular song in America in the mid-1960s. She has a voice with authority and warmth in equal measure, and she brings to the Vandellas a presence that turns competent recordings into urgent. Once she is not a passive instrument, she works the song, she pushes back in sessions, she has ideas. Nowhere to Run is written by the Holland Dozier Holland team. Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, Eddie Holland, the songwriting machine that is producing some of Motown's greatest records. It is a brilliant song. Martha Reeves and the Vandellas record it, and it reaches number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. The writing credit belongs entirely to HDH. Martha Reeves receives none of it, not a percentage, not a co-write acknowledgement, nothing. What is historically documented, and what Martha Reeves herself has spoken about in interviews over several decades, is that the vocal arrangement, the specific way the song was shaped inside the booth, the emotional decisions about phrasing and intensity that make the record feel the way it feels were not fully on the page when the session began. Reeves was not reading from a finished blueprint. She was helping build the house. The blueprints that got filed, however, had other names on them. Holland Dozier Holland eventually left Motown in 1968 in a dispute over royalties and credits with Berry Gordy. The irony is precise and painful. The team that benefited enormously from Motown's credit structure eventually found themselves on the receiving end of the same system. Martha Reeves, who had less institutional power than HDH and no comparable legal leverage, never received a comparable Number 10, Heat Wave, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, 1963. The story of how Martha Reeves joined Motown is one of those music industry origin stories that gets told so often it has become mythology. In 1962, she is working as a secretary at Motown. Mary Wells is scheduled to record but does not show up. Someone needs to cut the session. Martha Reeves is in the building. She sings. Berry Gordy hears it. She gets a deal. The reality underneath that story is more complicated and more instructive. Martha Reeves had been trying to get a recording deal at Motown for months before that afternoon. She was not a passive person who happened to be in the right hallway. She was a woman with a clear sense of her own ability who was being told to wait, to assist, to support, and who finally got heard because a circumstance forced the door open rather than because anyone opened it for her. Heatwave arrives in 1963. It is the record that establishes the Vandellas as a major act. It goes to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart. It is an extraordinary recording, energetic, committed, vocally alive in a way that many of Motown's more polished productions are not. There is something immediate about it, something that sounds like it was caught rather than constructed. That quality, that immediacy is Martha Reeves. It is the specific thing she brought to every session. The ability to make a recording sound like it is happening to you right now rather than being performed at you from a distance. It is a gift that cannot be manufactured by a production team, however talented. And it is a gift for which the production team received the writing credit, the publishing income, and the historical recognition, while the woman whose artistry made the song undeniable received a royalty rate that would have required a lawyer and an accountant to fully decode. Martha Reeves has spent decades in a quiet, persistent battle for proper recognition of what she and the Vandellas actually contributed to Motown's commercial and artistic success. The battle is not resolved, the catalog is not hers. The publishing income flows to entities that were established in the 1960s and have been compounding ever since. She performs still, with extraordinary commitment. She is 78 years old. The heat wave she helped create. Number 9, It Takes Two, Marvin Gaye and Kim. There is a particular cruelty in the mathematics of the Motown duet era. 2 voices, 1 record. The song belongs to both of them. You cannot hear it any other way. And yet the industry's promotional logic, the booking decisions, the contract renewal choices, the direction of the follow-up recording budget, all of these flow toward one name and away from the other, and the direction is almost always the same. Kim Weston had been at Motown since 1961. She was a singer of genuine power and emotional intelligence, her voice warm and authoritative, capable of the kind of phrasing that makes a line land differently from how it was written. She had recorded solo material, charted, built a presence. Then she was paired with Marvin Gaye for a series of duets, and the chemistry between their voices was immediate and undeniable. It Takes Two is the culmination of that partnership. Released in 1966, it is everything a soul duet should be. Call and response, 2 voices that know how to listen to each other, an arrangement that gives both singers room to breathe and then brings them together at exactly the right moment. It reaches number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 4 on the R&B chart. It is, by every commercial and artistic measure, a success. Shortly after its release, Kim Weston's contract with Motown was not renewed. She left the label. The official reasons were never fully articulated publicly, but the pattern was clear to anyone paying attention. She had served her purpose in the duet framework. The label had decided her solo commercial ceiling was lower than its other priorities, and the option was declined. Marvin Gaye's career continued its trajectory towards something that would eventually produce What's Going On. And let's get it on, Kim Weston's career never reached the altitude that her talent warranted. The song still plays, Marvin Gaye's name is on it. Kim Weston's name is on it too, in the small print, in the liner notes of the reissue, in the streaming metadata, but in the cultural conversation about the soul era, in the tribute documentaries, in the canonical accounts of Marvin Gaye's development as an artist, she is a duet partner, a chapter, a voice that made him sound better for 1 season before he moved forward.
Make a wish come true, yeah.
Number 8, Son of a Preacher Man, Dusty Springfield, 1968. Before Dusty Springfield sang Son of a Preacher Man, Mary Clayton sang it. This is a fact. It is documented, it is not disputed, and yet the record that exists in the permanent canon of soul and pop history is Springfield's version, and Mary Clayton's name appears. when it appears at all as a footnote in the production history of a song that she helped define before the version the world knows was ever recorded. Mary Clayton came out of the church. Her father was a minister. She was raised inside the specific sonic tradition of black gospel in Los Angeles, a tradition so technically demanding and emotionally rich that it produced, in the generation that came of age in the late 1950s and early 1960s, some of the most extraordinary vocal talent in American music history. She began doing session work in her teens. By the mid-1960s, she was one of the most sought-after backup singers in Los Angeles, the kind of vocalist that producers called when they needed something that their lead artist could not generate alone. The demo she recorded for Son of a Preacher Man was heard by the song's writer, John Hurley, and producer Chips Moman. It was good enough, and the phrasing she found, the specific emotional temperature she set for the song, that when the decision was made to record the definitive version, the producers built around what she had established. Dusty Springfield arrived in Memphis in 1968 and recorded her version at American Sound Studio. It is a beautiful recording. Springfield's voice does something with the song that is genuinely its own thing, and yet, listen to Clayton's demo and then listen to Springfield's release, and notice how many of the most specific, most emotionally precise moments in the released version trace their origin to choices that were made first in the demo booth by a woman who was paid for a demo and sent home while her instincts became someone else's hit record. Mary Clayton's story became more publicly known after her appearance in the 2013 documentary 20 Feet from Stardom, which examined the lives of backup singers whose contributions had been systematically overlooked. The documentary won an Academy Award. Clayton received recognition praise, a moment of cultural visibility that was long overdue. She was in her late 60s. The royalties from Son of a Preacher Man had been flowing for 45 years. None of them had her name. Number 7, Oh Happy Day, the Edwin Hawkins Singers.
When Jesus was.
Dorothy Combs Morrison was 21 years old when she sang Oh Happy Day. She was the lead vocalist of the Northern California State Youth Choir, a gospel ensemble directed by Edwin Hawkins that had been assembled from youth choirs across the Bay Area. The recording was made in 1967 at Ephesian Church of God in Christ in Berkeley, California. It was not made with commercial release in mind. It was made as a devotional recording, a document of faith intended for a gospel audience. What happened next is one of the strangest and most instructive stories in American music history. The recording, raw, live, full of the kind of collective emotional energy that only happens when a room full of people are genuinely moved by what they are doing, made its way to a radio station in San Francisco. A DJ played it, the switchboard lit up its spread. A rock promoter named John Smalley licensed it to Buddha Records in 1969. Oh Happy Day reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the British charts. It sold over 1 million copies worldwide. It was nominated for a Grammy. It was the first gospel recording to achieve mainstream crossover success at that scale in the modern era. Dorothy Morrison's voice is the reason. Her lead vocal on that track, the way she opens the song, the command in her phrasing, the gospel authority that she carries into every note, is what made a devotional choir recording into something that stopped secular radio listeners in their tracks. That voice did something that most producers spend entire careers trying to manufacture. It was real. It was true. It came from somewhere that technique cannot reach. Edwin Hawkins became a celebrated figure in gospel music. His name was on the record. His name was on the Grammy nomination. His name was the name that mainstream media used when they wrote about the crossover success. Dorothy Morrison toured with the choir, sang at concerts, experienced the strange dislocation of being the lead voice on a massive hit record, while the commercial architecture of that hit was being built around someone else's name and identity. She eventually left the ensemble and had a modest solo career. She has spoken in interviews about the experience of hearing her voice everywhere, in films, in television programs, in commercials, and having very little financial connection to that ubiquity. The recording she made in a church in Berkeley when she was 21 years old has been generating income for over 50 years. The income has not found its way to her in proportion to her contribution. Number 6, Don't Mess with Bill, the Marvin Gaye 1966. The Marvelettes were the first Motown group to have a number 1 pop hit, Please Mister. Postman, 1961. They got there before the Supremes. They got there before the Temptations. They were the group that proved Motown could reach the top of the mainstream chart, and they did it with a recording so infectious and so emotionally direct that it still sounds alive 60 years later. And then Motown decided the Supremes were the future, and the resources followed that decision, and the Marvelettes spent the rest of the decade watching the gap between their promotional support and Diana Ross's promotional support grow wider. Every year, Don't Mess With Bill arrives in 1966 as a late career moment of genuine commercial revival. Wanda Young sings lead, her voice clear and warm and possessed of a natural authority that makes the song feel both effortless and inevitable. It reaches number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart. It is by any measure a hit. For a brief moment, it looks like the Marvelettes might reassert themselves as Motown's premier female act. The follow-through does not come. The next single is good, the one after is good. But the promotional machinery, the television appearances, the magazine covers, the radio promotion budget, keeps flowing toward the Supremes, toward the image that Berry Gordy has decided is the face of Motown's crossover: ambition. Wanda Young and the Marvelettes are allowed to have hits. They are not allowed to have the infrastructure that turns hits into a sustained, dominant career. The Marvelettes officially disbanded in 1969. Wanda Young, who sang lead on some of the finest Motown recordings of the decade, stepped back from the music industry almost entirely. She raised her family. She lived in Michigan. She was not celebrated in the way that her commercial peers were celebrated. The hierarchy that Motown constructed, with the Supremes at the top and everyone else arranged below, was never formally acknowledged. It did not need to be. It operated through resource allocation, and resource allocation does not require a public announcement to do its work.
Don't mess with.
Number 5, Dancing in the Street, Martha. Dancing in the Street is one of the greatest recordings in the history of American popular music. It is also one of the most politically complex. A song that was heard at the moment of its release in the summer of 1964 as both a dance record and something else, something that carried in its energy and its invitation the specific urgency of a country in the middle of a civil rights movement that was transforming everything. Martha Reeves has spoken in interviews about the day the song was brought to her. She has described the session. She has described the work that went into making a record that sounds that alive, the specific decisions about energy and timing and vocal attack that she made in the booth, decisions that were not on the page when she walked in and that she developed in real time during the recording. She has described with characteristic directness the experience of hearing a record she made with her voice and her presence and her artistry described in the official historical accounts, primarily in terms of the men who wrote and produced it. Mickey Stevenson, Marvin Gaye, and Ivy Jo Hunter share the writing credit. They are the names in the textbooks, the names in the encyclopedias, the names in the streaming metadata. Martha Reeves is the performer. The distinction between writing and performing is real, and it matters legally. What it does not account for is the creative contribution of a vocalist who brings something to a song in the studio that the song did not have before she arrived, the specific quality that makes a competent recording into a masterpiece. Dancing in the Street has been covered hundreds of times. It has appeared in dozens of films. It was used as a civil rights anthem, a party record, a cultural touchstone for multiple generations. Every time it is licensed, every time it is streamed, every time someone pays to use it, the money flows according to the credit structure established in 1964. Martha Reeves has received her performer royalties. She has not received a songwriter's share of what is, in part, her creative work. She is 83 years old. She has been performing continuously for 60 years. She still has a remarkable voice. She is still one of the most commanding presences on a stage that the soul era produced. She still does not own the song. She still watches the song's commercial life generate income for estates and publishing entities that were built on work she helped create. She does so with a grace and a directness that the industry that treated her this way does not. Number 4, Respect Yourself, The Staple Singers, 1971. By 1971, Mavis Staples had been singing professionally for over 15 years. She had been singing since childhood. In the family group, her father, Roebuck Pop Staples, had built around his guitar and his children's voices. In Chicago in the late 1940s, she had toured with Martin Luther King Jr. She had sung at the March on Washington. She had been, for the civil rights movement, what Aretha Franklin would later be called. A voice that carried something larger than music, that made people feel the rightness of what they were fighting for. Respect Yourself is written by Luther Ingram and Mac Rice and brought to Staple singers as they are transitioning from their gospel roots into the soul and funk sound of Stax Records under the direction of Al Bell. It is a message song, direct, uncompromising, built around the idea that dignity begins with the self and radiates outward. It is the kind of song that Mavis Staples has been singing all her life, just in a slightly different room. She takes the demo and does what she does with every song she touches, which is locate the emotional truth inside it and sing from that place rather than from the surface. The record she makes with her father and her siblings is one of the defining recordings of the early 1970s, a song that managed to be commercially accessible and spiritually serious simultaneously, which is one of the hardest things in popular music to do. The writing credit belongs to Ingram and Rice. The production credit belongs to Al Bell. Mavis Staples' name is on the record as performer. What is not on the record, what has never appeared in the official documentation of Respect Yourself, is the specific creative contribution she made to the arrangement, to the phrasing, to the decisions about how the song's message should be delivered. She shaped the demo. She shaped the session. She shaped the thing that the song became. The publishing split was established before she walked into the room. Mavis Staples is still performing. She is 88 years old and her voice improbably, magnificently, still carries everything it has ever carried. She has had a late career renaissance that has brought her the critical recognition she always deserved, and some of the commercial rewards that went elsewhere for most of her life. It is better than nothing. It is not what she was owed.
It's a brand new day.
Number 3, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Tammy Terrell and Marvin Gaye, 1967.
I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry.
Valerie Simpson wrote Ain't No Mountain High Enough. She wrote it with Nicholas Ashford, her partner in life and in songwriting, and the song is a complete and perfect thing, a declaration of unconditional love so total and so specific that it functions both as a pop song and as a piece of philosophical argument. It says, "There is no distance, no obstacle, no condition that would prevent me from being there." It says this in 3 minutes and 35 seconds, and it says it so well that it has never needed to be said again. The song was recorded first by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell in 1967. Their version is extraordinary. Terrell's voice bright and full of light, Gaye's warm and present, the two of them creating the specific kind of chemistry that a song about absolute love requires. It reaches number 3 on the R&B chart and number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100. It is a significant hit. Ashford and Simpson received the writing credit. It is the beginning of their recognition as one of the great songwriting partnerships of the era. What the historical narrative does not always adequately reckon with is the specific asymmetry within that partnership's public reception. Nicholas Ashford was the more publicly visible figure. In interviews and media appearances in the industry's social architecture, his name tended to lead. Valerie Simpson was the primary piano player, the principal vocal architect of the demo recordings that Ashford and Simpson used to pitch their songs, and by multiple accounts the more prolific generator of melodic ideas within the partnership. She was also, by the standards of the music industry in the late 1960s, a black woman working in a structure that consistently attributed creative leadership to the man standing nearest to her. Diana Ross recorded a solo version of Ain't No Mountain High Enough in 1970. It went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It won Ashford and Simpson a Grammy nomination. It became one of the most celebrated recordings of the early 1970s and one of the signature moments of Diana Ross's solo career. Valerie Simpson's piano is in the demo. Her melodic sensibility is in the structure of the song. Her name is on the copyright, and in the cultural account of the song's legacy, she is the quieter half of a celebrated partnership, which is a form of partial erasure that is harder to name and harder to fight than outright credit theft. Nicholas Ashford died in 2011. The tributes were warm and deserved. Valerie Simpson is still alive, still performing, still writing. She has spoken in recent years about the experience of watching her partner receive recognition that was always meant for both of them and sometimes felt like it was meant, in the public imagination, primarily for him. She says it without bitterness. That lack of bitterness, in the face of 50 years of asymmetric recognition, is itself an extraordinary thing. Number 2, I'd Rather Go Blind, Etta James, 1967.
That it was over.
Etta James wrote I'd Rather Go Blind in a jail cell. She has said this directly and repeatedly in interviews across 5 decades. She wrote it during a period of incarceration from the specific emotional territory of a woman who understood what it felt like to lose something essential and to know clearly that she had. The song came from inside a real experience, written in conditions that had nothing to do with the commercial music industry and everything to do with human survival. She brought the song to a recording session for her Cadet Records album Tell Mama in 1967. The song was recorded at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, the same studio that had just produced Aretha Franklin's I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, the same room where some of the most important soul recordings of the decade were being made. Etta James sang I'd Rather Go Blind with the kind of authority that only comes from having written something from the inside of your own life. The song was released as a B-side to Tell Mama. It charted in the UK, where it became a significant hit and established James as a major figure in British soul audiences. In the United States, its recognition came more slowly, but it accumulated over decades into something permanent, a song that music critics and musicians consistently cite as one of the greatest soul recordings ever made, a song that has been covered by hundreds of artists, a song that appears in every serious conversation about what the genre accomplished. The writing credit on I'd Rather Go Blind is shared between Etta James and Ellington Jordan. Jordan was a musician in James's circle at the time of the recording. James has stated with increasing directness as the years passed that Jordan's contribution to the song was not equivalent to the credit he received, that she was the author of the song and that the co-write was filed in a way that did not reflect what actually happened. Jordan disputed this. The dispute was never legally resolved in a way that changed the credit structure. The consequence is mathematical. The publishing income from one of the most covered, most licensed, most culturally significant songs in the soul canon has been split according to a credit structure that the person who actually wrote the song spent decades contesting. Every film placement, every streaming play, every cover version generates income that is distributed according to that structure. Etta James died in 2012. She died knowing that the song she wrote in a jail cell was still paying half its publishing to a name that she said had no right to be there.
Delirious. I guess I was just a little delirious.
Number 1, Young Hearts Run Free, Candi, Staton, 1976.
Another lost and lonely wife. You count up the years.
This is the one, Candi, Staton. I need you to understand what she is before we get into what was done to her, because the full weight of this story only lands if you understand the size of the talent that the industry decided it could afford to waste. Candi Staton came out of Alabama. She came out of the church, a childhood so immersed in gospel music that by the time she was a teenager, she had already developed a vocal style that professional musicians who heard her described as fully formed, distinctive, and almost unnervingly authoritative. She sang the way people sing when they have something to say and have decided they are going to say it whether the room is ready or not. She had that quality that every great soul singer has and that no producer can manufacture. She sounded like she meant every single word. She signed to Fame Records in Muscle Shoals in the late 1960s and recorded a series of remarkable soul records that charted, that got played, that built her a significant audience across the American South and eventually further. Stand By Your Man, her 1970 cover of Tammy Wynette, went to number 24 on the Billboard Hot 100. I'm Just a Prisoner, Young Hearts Run Free's immediate predecessor in her catalog, demonstrated a vocal range and emotional intelligence that should have positioned her as one of the defining voices of the decade. Young Hearts Run Free arrives in 1976, produced by Dave Crawford, released on Warner Brothers Records. It is not a subtle record. It is a woman telling the truth about a bad marriage, about a life that did not go the way it was supposed to, about the specific exhaustion of being in a situation that is hurting you and knowing it and staying anyway. It is autobiographical in the way that the best soul music is autobiographical, particular enough to be real, universal enough to be everyone's story. It reached number 2 on the R&B chart and number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the United States. In the United Kingdom, it reached number 2 on the pop chart and became the song that defined the transition moment between soul and disco, the record that both communities claim because it had something in it that went deeper than genre. It has never left. It has been sampled, covered, re-released, licensed, used in films and television programs and advertising campaigns across 5 decades. It is one of the most commercially durable recordings in the catalog of soul music from the 1970s. Candi Staton's relationship to that durability is the story of the soul era's structural injustice in its most concentrated form, the Warner Brothers deal, like most major label deals of the mid-1970s, was structured in ways that made it very difficult for an artist to accumulate net income from record's commercial success in the short term. Recording costs, promotional costs, tour support costs, all of these were advanced against royalties and recouped before the artist saw net income. Young Hearts Run Free, despite its commercial performance, did not make Candi Staton wealthy. The recording's long subsequent commercial life, the sampling, the licensing, the streaming, generates income according to a rights structure established at the time of the original deal, she continued to record. She returned to gospel music in the 1980s, finding in that return both a spiritual home and a commercial audience. She has had moments of renewed mainstream visibility, most notably when the 1976 recording was re-released and recharted in the UK in the 1990s, following its use in the film Secrets and Lies. She has been recognized in the way that the industry recognizes people it shortchanged, with tribute moments and reissues, and the occasional interview in which someone describes her as underrated. Underrated. That is the word the industry uses when it wants to acknowledge that something wrong happened without taking responsibility for the fact that it happened wrong on purpose. Candi Staton was not underrated. She was rated precisely. The industry knew exactly what she had. It took what it wanted from her, paid her what it had contractually committed to pay, and then moved on to the next person. She was not a mistake. She was a policy. She is still alive. She is in her 80s. She still performs. And somewhere tonight, in a club or a film or a streaming playlist or a radio station running an oldies set, Young Hearts Run Free is playing. Someone is hearing her voice, that specific voice that came out of Alabama and out of the church and out of a life that she sang about with absolute honesty, and they are feeling something they cannot quite name. That feeling is hers. She gave it to the world. The world took it. And history until now has been content to let the transaction stand without examining what it cost. 12 names, 12 songs, 12 moments where something extraordinary was made and someone else was handed the deed. Erma Franklin, Martha Reeves, Kim Weston, Mary Clayton, Dorothy Morrison, Wanda Young, Mavis Staples, Valerie Simpson, Etta James, Candi Staton. And the two we could not reduce to a single song because their entire careers were the story. Their music is like a letter written at 2 in the morning, sealed, addressed to you across 50 years, delivered under somebody else's return address. But the handwriting is theirs. The truth inside it has always been theirs. And now you know whose hands held the pen. Drop their name in the comments. Tell us which story sat heaviest. Subscribe. Because we are not done. We are nowhere near done.